On the morning of August the 15th, 1893, a frantic telegram sliced through the opulent serenity of Newport, Rhode Island. It sparked one of the Gilded Age's most disturbing, utterly unexplainable mysteries. Evangelene Cunningham, a mere 23 years old, heir to a railroad fortune worth over $40 million, a sum that would defy comprehension even today, had simply vanished. Evaporated from her family's sprawling oceanfront mansion, vanished during the most exclusive, most glittering social event of the entire Newport season. This was not merely a disappearance, this was an erasure. What made her vanishing truly chilling wasn't just the impossible circumstances. It was what investigators, briefly granted access before the influence of power descended, found hidden in her private chambers. There were detailed photographs of 13 prominent Newport families, each marked with cryptic, unsettling symbols, like a dark, intricate code. A leather-bound journal, meticulously kept, containing names, precise dates, and staggering dollar amounts that, if exposed, would implicate some of America's most powerful industrialists in a chilling web of blackmail and calculated murder, a conspiracy that stretched back not just years but decades. And, most disturbing of all, a collection of forged death certificates. Each bore the signatures of 3 different coroners. Each documented deaths that had been officially ruled accidental, innocent acts of fate. But Evangelene's meticulous notes revealed an identical, sinister truth. They all showed the unmistakable symptoms of arsenic poisoning. For over a century, the immense influence of the Cunningham family, guardians of this dark secret, has been used to keep these devastating discoveries buried. They claimed Evangelene died in a tragic accident abroad, a convenient lie draped over an unspeakable truth. But you're about to hear the real story, the one they never wanted you to know. Federal investigators, those few brave enough who dared to attempt a deeper examination of this damning evidence, mysteriously found their access blocked. Court orders, signed by judges whose financial ties to the very railroad interests Evangelene had been investigating ran deep and dark, solidified the wall of silence. Local newspaper editors, initially drawn to the lurid intrigue of a missing heiress, suddenly, inexplicably, reversed course. Their interest evaporated after receiving quiet yet utterly unmistakable visits. Well-dressed men, their voices soft but their eyes hard, spoke quietly of unfortunate consequences for those who dared to spread malicious rumors about respected citizens. This was not persuasion. This was absolute control. But recently discovered court documents and buried, forgotten witness testimonies. These paint a far more sinister, far more horrifying picture of that August night in 1893. A cache of letters, shockingly found secreted within the very walls of a demolished mansion in Providence, Rhode Island, reveal the chilling truth. Evangelene had not been working alone. She had been operating in the shadows, collaborating with a clandestine network of private investigators, courageous foreign journalists, and even a handful of rogue federal agents. They were all secretly documenting what they, in their own desperate coded language, termed the American conspiracy. This was no mere isolated incident of corruption. This was a systematic, meticulously orchestrated campaign of murder and calculated manipulation that reached into the very highest levels of government and business. Tonight, we will reveal evidence suggesting Evangelene's disappearance was not an isolated incident, not an unfortunate anomaly, but part of a terrifying pattern of eliminations, a sequence of silent, invisible assassinations that had already claimed the lives of at least 37 individuals. All of them had one thing in common. They had threatened to expose what contemporary secret documents chillingly referred to as the Newport Compact, a secret alliance, an unholy covenant of America's wealthiest, most powerful families. They had not merely divided the nation's vast resources among themselves. They were prepared to kill anyone who dared to challenge their absolute, unyielding control, and Evangelene Cunningham was their next target. Newport, in the summer of 1893, shimmered under the hot August sun, the undisputed glittering crown jewel of American high society. Its grand balls, its lavish parties, its endless parade of opulence were the stuff of legend. But beneath that dazzling artificial surface, a festering web of secrets, bitter rivalries, and barely contained violence churned. A truth so shocking, so utterly depraved, it would have shattered the carefully constructed illusions of the American public had they ever been allowed to glimpse it. This coastal Rhode Island town, once a modest colonial settlement, had been ruthlessly transformed. It had become what newspapers, in their awestruck yet utterly ignorant prose, called America's Monte Carlo, a gilded playground where railroad barons, steel magnates, and shipping dynasties engaged in a relentless, silent war. They competed not merely for profit, but for absolute dominion, vying to outdo one another in displays of unprecedented, almost obscene wealth. The famous Bellevue Avenue had become a procession of marble palaces, each more extravagant, more ostentatious than the last. These were not mere summer cottages, but vast, sprawling monuments to unchecked greed. Their very construction had come at an unspeakable cost, the lives of dozens of immigrant workers, men whose deaths were rarely recorded, never investigated, their bodies simply absorbed into the foundations of these temples to avarice. The transformation of Newport into this glittering yet morally rotten paradise had been orchestrated with chilling precision. A small, select group of families, ruthless in their ambition, had recognized a fundamental truth. Concentrated wealth, truly absolute power, required more than mere business acumen. It demanded sophisticated methods of social control. They had learned from the tumultuous labor unrest and political challenges of the 1870s and 1880s that public opinion, if allowed to fester, could be dangerous to their interests. Newport, in its cloistered, insular splendor, represented their ultimate solution. A closed community, a fortress of privilege where they could plan their ruthless business strategies, arrange strategic marriages between their heirs, and coordinate their responses to any perceived threats without fear of outside interference, a world built on secrets and sealed by blood. Within this rarefied, meticulously controlled world, the Cunningham family occupied a position of unparalleled prominence. Harrison Cunningham, the patriarch, had not merely built an empire, he had forged a leviathan. His dominion rose through the Baltimore and Newport Railroad, a colossal network that connected the major industrial centers of the entire Northeast, becoming utterly essential to the movement of coal, steel, and manufactured goods. By 1893, his declared wealth was estimated at over $40 million, a figure equivalent to more than $1 billion in today's money. But even this staggering sum, enough to buy and sell nations, represented only his acknowledged assets. The true scope of his power remained hidden. Private banking records, meticulously concealed for decades, would not be unearthed until the 1970s. These damning documents revealed that Cunningham controlled shadow companies worth at least another $20 million. These hidden assets included ruthless mining operations in Colorado, rapacious timber companies in the Pacific Northwest, and secretive shipping firms that operated under foreign flags, deliberately circumventing American labor laws, exploiting the desperate for maximum profit. The family's Newport estate, Windward Hall, stood as a physical manifestation of this concealed power. It sat majestically on a 12-acre bluff, gazing imperiously over the Atlantic Ocean, its 68 rooms overflowing with treasures plundered from across Europe. But the mansion itself held far more than mere artifacts. It contained features that few guests, and even fewer outsiders, ever saw. A private telegraph office connected directly to railroad dispatch centers, a nexus of immediate, unchallengeable communication, a document vault with walls thick enough to withstand dynamite, a fortress for secrets, and a clandestine network of undergrounders. Tunnels weaving beneath the manicured lawns, connecting to similar, shadowy facilities at neighboring elite estates. These chilling features reflected the grim reality that Newport's glittering social season was as much about coordinating vast business conspiracies as it was about trivial entertainment, and Evangelene, the heiress to this dark empire, would become its greatest internal threat. Harrison Cunningham's daughter, Evangelene, captivated Newport society. Her intelligence, her beauty, her seemingly ethereal grace made her the undisputed darling of the social season. Yet, she simultaneously represented its greatest, most insidious internal threat. Contemporaries described her as possessing an otherworldly beauty, a luminosity that seemed to set her apart. She had returned from 3 years of rigorous European finishing schools, not just polished, but profoundly transformed. Her education, far exceeding what was considered proper for young women of her station, had sharpened her mind into a dangerous weapon. She spoke 4 languages fluently, had delved into the profound depths of philosophy and literature at the Sorbonne, a bastion of intellectual inquiry. And she possessed what her governess, with a strained diplomatic euphemism, termed an uncomfortably inquisitive mind. More troublingly for her family's meticulously constructed interests, Evangelene had also received specialized instruction in accounting, in business law, and, most critically, in investigative techniques. These were not the usual studies for a Gilded Age heiress. Her professors, unwitting instruments of fate, had no idea they were educating someone who would wield these very skills to threaten the entire monolithic structure of American corporate power. At 23, Evangelene had already defiantly rejected marriage proposals from 2 European counts and the son of a powerful Pennsylvania steel magnate. This was not the whim of a capricious debutante. Her rejections stemmed not from romantic preference, but from a terrifying, calculated discovery. Through her own relentless investigation, she had learned that each of these seemingly eligible suitors had been meticulously selected because their families were complicit in the very same vast network of corruption that her father's monstrous business empire depended upon. The European counts were not merely aristocrats. They were representatives of banking interests that laundered the illicit blood-soaked profits from American industrial accidents. The steel magnate's son was personally responsible for the deaths of over 40 workers in a series of preventable mine collapses, their lives snuffed out for profit. Evangelene knew, and she was about to act. The summer of 1893 pulsed with an oppressive tension for the Cunningham family, a palpable dread that permeated not just Windward Hall, but indeed all of Newport's elite families. Heiress Cunningham's health was failing, his robust constitution inexplicably deteriorating. Few, if any, realized the chilling truth. His symptoms ominously matched those of other prominent business leaders who had in recent times begun to subtly question the ruthless methods of the Newport Compact. These men, once formidable, had inconveniently fallen ill, their dissent silenced by a creeping malaise. Questions surrounding the railroad succession, particularly Harrison's vast empire, had begun to surface among both long-standing business partners and aggressive competitors. The urgency was amplified by a series of recent strategically convenient accidents that had systematically eliminated potential challenges to Cunningham's iron-fisted control of key transportation routes. Evangelene, as the only legitimate heir to this vast, tainted fortune, was destined to inherit everything. But there was a chilling caveat. She would only inherit if she married before her 25th birthday, according to the precise, unyielding terms of her grandfather's will. This legal stipulation, an invisible leash, had created a sense of desperate urgency that permeated every glittering social gathering that season. But it had also, perhaps unintentionally, provided Evangelene with a powerful, dangerous bargaining position. She had quietly, deftly allowed it to be known among her parents' labyrinthine network of business associates that her cooperation with the marriage requirement might, just might, depend upon receiving satisfactory answers to certain pointed questions about the true nature of the family business operations. It was a subtle threat, a veiled demand for transparency in a yasoabuyus, all built on profound, murderous secrecy, and it placed her on a collision course with the very powers that sought to control her. The broader context of 1893 added another oppressive layer of complexity to Newport's already intricate social dynamics. The entire nation was gripped by the terrifying reality of the Panic of 1893, a severe economic depression that had erupted that spring when the mighty Philadelphia and Reading Railroad Company failed, triggering a catastrophic cascade of bank failures and widespread business bankruptcies. While the obscenely wealthy residents of Newport appeared largely insulated from the immediate financial crisis, their public facades of prosperity often masked a far more brutal, hidden truth. Many fortunes were quietly, irrevocably crumbling. Several prominent families, once untouchable, had been forced to sell their opulent mansions or retreat to smaller, more discreet quarters, all while desperately maintaining their public illusions of unassailable wealth. What the general public, immersed in their struggle, did not know, what they could not possibly comprehend, was the chilling, horrifying reality. The Panic of 1893 had been deliberately engineered. It was not a random economic downturn. It was a calculated, ruthless act perpetrated by the Newport Compact itself, a sophisticated, brutal method of consolidating their absolute control over American industry. By meticulously manipulating credit markets, by deliberately triggering strategic bankruptcies, they had been able to acquire their competitors' most valuable assets at a mere fraction of their true value, while their own vast wealth remained meticulously protected, meticulously hidden, through a labyrinthine network of foreign bank accounts and shadowy shell companies. In this atmosphere of artificial crisis, of engineered desperation, Evangelene Cunningham's massive, targeted inheritance had taken on an almost mythical, almost predatory quality among Newport's ravenous social circles. It was not just money, it was power, and it was a prize worth killing for. The psychological atmosphere of Newport in 1893 was further complicated, deepened by the ominous presence of numerous European visitors. These were not merely socialites seeking summer diversion. They had come as representatives of powerful, shadowy banking and industrial interests, their true purpose to establish insidious footholds in the burgeoning American economy. Many of these sophisticated European observers were genuinely surprised, even unnerved, by the raw level of violence and intimidation they discovered simmering beneath the polished veneer of America's business elite. Count Friedrich von Stauffen, a German banker whose astute observations were far from casual, attended several Newport social events that summer. He meticulously documented his chilling insights in his private diary, a testament to what he witnessed. "The Americans speak of business competition," he wrote, his words cutting through the superficiality, "but what I observe here is more akin to medieval warfare conducted with modern weapons." He continued, his observations piercing to the core of the Newport Compact's nature. "These people have organized themselves into feudal domains, each protecting its territory through methods that would shock even the most ruthless European industrialists." The Count's observations were particularly astute, because he had, with his keen, detached eye, witnessed several incidents that other Gilded Age guests either conveniently missed or deliberately chose to ignore. During a seemingly innocuous garden party at the Piton estate, he had observed Theodore Piton, a prominent figure in the Compact, engaged in a heated, hushed discussion with a man who appeared, unmistakably, to be a high-ranking federal government official. The terse conversation concluded with Piton discreetly handing the official a leather briefcase, a silent exchange of power. The official Hen departed immediately, without participating in the social festivities. When von Stauffen, feigning casual interest, discreetly inquired about the incident, he was met with a practiced, dismissive response. Such exchanges were merely routine business matters that need not concern social guests. A lie. A blatant, chilling lie. And Evangelene Cunningham, the heiress, was on the precipice of exposing it all. The evening of August the 14th, 1893, began like countless others in Newport's relentlessly glittering social calendar. Yet beneath the veneer of gaiety, contemporary accounts suggest a chilling awareness permeated many of the participants. They were attending what might well be the final act of a drama, a deadly, high-stakes play that had been building for months, its tension coiling tighter with each passing day. The Cunninghams were hosting their annual Summer's End Ball, a tradition that had become one of the most coveted invitations of the season. But this gathering served multiple, far more sinister purposes beyond mere social entertainment. Over 300 guests had been meticulously invited to Windward Hall. This was no random assemblage of the social elite. This carefully curated guest list represented not only the cream of American and European high society, but also a precisely selected group of politicians, judges, journalists, and powerful business leaders. Each of their cooperations was utterly essential to maintaining the Newport Compact's iron-fisted control over American commerce. The mansion blazed with electric lights, still a captivating novelty in 1893, a dazzling display of technological sophistication that few private residences could possibly match. This advanced electric system had been installed not merely for illumination, but also to power a private telephone exchange. A direct, instant conduit that allowed the Cunningham family to maintain immediate communication with railroad dispatch centers, with stock exchanges, and with telegraph offices across the entire nation. Chinese lanterns, decorative and seemingly innocuous, illuminated the sprawling terrace gardens that cascaded down toward the dark, murmuring ocean. But hidden among the charming decorative lighting were powerful calcium lights. These were not for ambiance. These were capable of instantly illuminating the entire estate grounds, blindingly bright, if any security concerns, any threats dared to arise. The stage was set for a night of power, pretense, and profound danger. The guest list for that fateful evening revealed the true, brutal nature of Newport's social structure. Among the glittering attendees, the architects and enforcers of the Newport Compact moved freely, their power absolute. There was Senator Marcus Hale of Pennsylvania, a man who had consistently voted against railroad safety legislation, his political career a testament to his loyalty to the compact. Judge Cornelius Weatherby of the Rhode Island Supreme Court was also present, the very man who had dismissed numerous lawsuits against industrial companies, his legal pronouncements conveniently favoring the powerful. And Dr. Edmund Sheffield, the state medical examiner, whose carefully crafted death certificates had allowed dozens of industrial accidents, human tragedies, to be conveniently classified as acts of God rather than corporate negligence. Also present were 3 foreign diplomats whose governments had been quietly negotiating lucrative trade agreements that would grant American corporations preferential access to overseas markets. In return, substantial private payments, untraceable and illicit, flowed into the coffers of European officials. Evangeline appeared that evening in a gown of pale blue silk, a seemingly innocent vision of grace. Around her neck, she wore the legendary Cunningham sapphires, a necklace worth more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. But this dazzling display of wealth concealed a hidden compartment. Within its secret confines lay several of her most damaging pieces of evidence against the Newport Compact, meticulously secured, waiting for the opportune moment. Those who spoke with her later recalled that she seemed unusually animated, almost electrically excited, as if a vital current ran through her veins. Yet several perceptive guests noted an underlying tension in her manner, a subtle tremor that suggested she was preparing for some decisive, monumental action, the final, desperate move in a game she knew would cost her everything. This was not a party. This was a battleground. Amidst the swirling dance of high society, Evangeline made her move. It was a calculated act of desperate defiance, a final attempt to shatter the silence that protected the Newport Compact. Mrs. Eleanor Sedgwick, the astute wife of a Boston banking magnate, found herself drawn into Evangeline's orbit. Eleanor herself, unbeknownst to most, had been quietly pursuing her own investigation into the shadowy irregularities plaguing railroad financing, a woman uniquely positioned to understand the dangerous game Evangeline was playing. Later, she would recount the chilling encounter to investigators. Evangeline had pulled her aside during the first waltz, her voice a hushed, urgent whisper against the backdrop of the orchestra. "Eleanor," Evangeline breathed, her eyes burning with a desperate intensity. "If something should happen to me tonight, remember that you saw me speaking with Theodore Peton near the conservatory. Remember the time. It was precisely 9:15. This was more than a mere observation. It was a coded instruction, a vital piece of the puzzle. And then, the critical transfer. With a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture, Evangeline slipped a small, cold key into Mrs. Sedgwick's gloved hand. Her voice, tight with urgency, continued. Post Office Box 247 in Providence. The combination is my birthday reversed. Her gaze locked onto Eleanor's. Whatever you find there, Eleanor, ensure it reaches the Boston Herald and the New York World simultaneously. This was not just evidence. This was an explosive charge set to detonate beneath the very foundations of American corporate power. Evangeline, knowing her time was running out, was entrusting the destruction of the Newport Compact to another, a desperate act of rebellion against forces that operated beyond human law in the depths of a gilded abyss. She had signed her own death warrant, but perhaps in doing so, she had secured the truth's release. Theodore Peyton, 34 years old, heir to a formidable Pittsburgh steel fortune, presented himself as one of Evangeline's most persistent suitors. But his interest in marriage, in securing the hand of the beautiful heiress, was devoid of romance. It was a cold, calculated transaction, driven solely by business concerns. Peyton was known for his volatile temper, a dangerous unpredictability. More damningly, he carried colossal gambling debts that exceeded $200,000, a staggering sum even for the Gilded Age elite. But what few realized was the chilling truth behind these debts. They were owned not by mere creditors, but by the Newport Compact itself. They had been strategically purchased from his original lenders, a meticulously orchestrated maneuver designed to ensure his absolute, unquestioning cooperation with the organization's darkest activities. Peyton was a puppet, his strings pulled by the very powers Evangeline sought to expose. That evening, witnesses observed several heated conversations between Peyton and Heiress Cunningham, Evangeline's own father. The content of these discussions remained private, shrouded in the impenetrable silence of their power. However, James Weatherby, the judge's son and a junior partner in the Cunningham railroad business, found himself positioned to overhear crucial portions of these terse exchanges. According to his later chilling testimony, Heiress Cunningham, the patriarch of the empire, was attempting to convince Peyton that more direct methods might prove necessary to resolve the Evangeline situation, an ominous euphemism for unspeakable acts. Peyton surprisingly expressed a fleeting concern about the foreign complications such brutal methods might create. He feared the repercussions, but the compact knew. They were already prepared to plunge Evangeline into an abyss from which no one could return. The foreign complications Theodore Peyton so nervously referenced were not mere diplomatic inconveniences. They were a direct testament to the terrifying global reach of Evangeline Cunningham's investigation. She had leveraged her extensive European education and her formidable network of contacts to forge alliances with powerful, unyielding forces across the Atlantic. Her allies included a clandestine network of European journalists and independent investigators, relentless truth-seekers who had been meticulously documenting the international scope of American corporate corruption. Reporters from the venerable London Times, the incisive Paris Le Figaro, and the influential Berlin Tagblatt, each a titan of European journalism, were actively preparing explosive exposés. These meticulously researched articles were poised to lay bare American business practices that not only violated ethical standards, but flagrantly contravened international law. The Newport Compact, in its desperate attempts to maintain its iron grip on power, had already poured vast sums into substantial bribes, systematically suppressing some of these damaging stories. But Evangeline's collaboration, her direct conduit to the truth, was essential. Her continued cooperation was the linchpin, the singular factor preventing a coordinated international campaign of truth. A campaign that threatened not just their illicit profits, but promised severe trade sanctions and devastating diplomatic consequences that could unravel their entire global web of deceit. Evangeline had not just found a secret, she had found the very global jugular of the Newport Compact. And the compact knew with chilling certainty that her knowledge, her very existence, was now an existential threat that demanded immediate, absolute, and permanent erasure. The world was watching, unknowingly, as the heiress made her final move. As the evening progressed and the ball reached its glittering, deceptive crescendo, Evangeline moved through the throng with an almost manic energy, a woman operating on the precipice of a profound, terrifying decision. She engaged in unusually long, intensely focused conversations with various guests, her voice low, her gaze piercing. Many of these powerful figures, accustomed to the polite superficiality of Gilded Age society, later reported feeling that she was subtly, meticulously testing their knowledge, probing the very depths of their loyalties. A final, desperate attempt to secure her truth. Professor Marcus Aldrich of Yale University, a guest of a prominent Newport family, found himself drawn into Evangelene's orbit. He recalled his surprise when she approached him with meticulously detailed questions about recent archaeological discoveries in Egypt. Her interest, however, was not academic curiosity. It was chillingly pragmatic. She seemed particularly intensely focused on methods of preserving documents and artifacts for extended periods. She asked specifically about waterproof containers, about whether organic materials, fragile remnants of the past, could survive being buried in coastal soil conditions for decades, even for centuries. A terrifying foresight. Dr. Sheffield, the state medical examiner, also found himself ensnared in her intellectual web. He initially assumed their conversation was mere casual banter about forensic medicine, but he would later realize, with a cold, dawning horror, that he had been subjected to a sophisticated, subtle interrogation about methods of detecting various poisons and drugs in decomposed remains. Evangeline, this refined society lady, demonstrated a knowledge of forensic techniques that far exceeded what any woman of her station should possess. She asked specific, unsettling questions about how long different substances remained detectable in human tissue, about whether certain toxins could be confused with natural diseases, mimicking other, less suspicious causes of death. She was not just investigating a crime, she was dissecting its methodology. She was protecting her legacy and sealing her own fate. At approximately 10:30 p.m., as the opulent summer's end ball reached its dazzling, deceptive crescendo, Evangelene Cunningham excused herself from the ballroom. The air, thick with the scent of perfume and the murmur of power, was electric with unspoken tension. She claimed she needed to retrieve a specific family heirloom from her private chambers, an artifact to show to Count Friedrich von Stauffen, who had, conveniently, expressed a keen interest in American railroad history. This seemingly innocuous act was not unusual behavior for the Cunningham family, renowned for their impromptu displays of their vast art collection and historical documents. But what transpired next, unseen by the glittering throng, was a deviation that screamed of hidden purpose. Evangeline specifically requested that no servants accompany her. Her voice, calm but unyielding, insisted she could manage alone, that she wished to select the items personally. This was not a desire for privacy. It was a coded signal, a precise, dangerous instruction she had meticulously arranged weeks earlier. The guests, immersed in their gilded world, remained utterly oblivious to the true identity of Count von Stauffen. He was no mere casual visitor, no mere European aristocrat drawn by social curiosity. He was a powerful representative of European banking interests, a clandestine investigator who had been quietly, persistently delving into the pervasive irregularities of American railroad financing at the desperate behest of several German investors who suspected they were being defrauded. Evangeline, risking everything, had been secretly providing him with damning information about the Newport Compact's vast international operations. Her mention of retrieving historical documents was his precisely timed cue, his signal to prepare, to ready himself for the final, catastrophic transfer of evidence that would at last expose the unholy conspiracy to European authorities, shattering the very foundations of the Newport Compact's hidden empire. She walked into her chambers, her true mission a secret pact with destiny, and from that moment she was swallowed by the abyss. As Evangeline vanished into her private chambers, her final, desperate act of defiance set in motion a chain of events from which there was no return. Count von Stauffen, awaiting his crucial rendezvous, remained in the ballroom, a solitary figure amidst the retreating glitter, his senses sharpened by anticipation. He watched the clock, the seconds stretching into an eternity. His cue, Evangeline's reappearance, never came. The ball wound down, its final waltz fading into silence. Guests, oblivious to the hidden drama, began to depart, their carriages rolling away into the cold Newport night, carrying them from a mansion now heavy with a terrifying void. The orchestra packed its instruments. The servants moved with practiced efficiency to clear the remnants of the lavish deception. But no one saw Evangelene. No one witnessed her return to the grand ballroom. The Count, his diplomatic facade now cracking under the weight of a growing dread, understood. The final transfer of evidence, the exposing of the Newport Compact, had not occurred. Evangelene, the daring heiress, had perhaps underestimated the ruthlessness of the forces she sought to expose. The silence from her private chambers was not the calm of preparation, but the ominous stillness of an abyss that had opened and swallowed its victim whole. The cold reality began to settle. The secret, the damning truth she held, had been consumed, and perhaps so had she. The game had ended, and the house, once vibrant with life and secrets, now held only a chilling emptiness. The dawn of August 15th, 1893 arrived, bringing with it no answers, only a deepening horror. Margaret Sullivan, the vigilant head housekeeper, began her routine duties, her practiced movements leading her inevitably to the grand foyer. What she discovered shattered the meticulous order of the Vandermark mansion and confirmed the impossible truth. Evangelene was gone. The heavy front door remained locked from the inside, its formidable iron bolt engaged, impenetrable. Every window, sealed against the bitter night, showed no sign of tampering. Thomas Brennan, the groundskeeper, confirmed his earlier testimony. The pristine snow around the mansion bore no footprints, no trace of disturbance. If someone had left, they had defied the very laws of physics, vanished without touching the ground. And then the chilling tableau in the foyer. Evangelene's emerald evening gown, a garment she had been seen wearing hours before, lay perfectly arrayed on the Persian rug, still warm to the touch. The scent of her signature lavender perfume lingered in the cold morning air, a spectral echo of her recent presence. The scene screamed of an impossible vanishing, a sudden, inexplicable evaporation. The alarm was raised. The Newport Police Department, pressured by Cornelius Vandermark's immense influence, arrived expecting a simple case. Instead, they found themselves staring into a void, a disappearance that violated every known law of physics. Their initial skepticism quickly curdled into baffled frustration, unable to comprehend a crime scene where the victim was gone, but all points of exit remained sealed. The mansion itself became a monument to the inexplicable, a place where reality had twisted and swallowed a human life whole. The official police investigation into Evangelene's disappearance was brief, frantic, and ultimately futile. Despite the immense pressure from Cornelius Vandermark's political connections, the authorities found themselves utterly outmatched by the sheer impossibility of the crime. Their methods, their logic, their very understanding of the physical world failed them. How could a woman vanish from a locked mansion without a trace? The crime scene offered no clues, no forced entry, no footprints in the snow, no struggle. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist, swallowed by the very air she breathed. Cornelius Vandermark, ever the master of control, meticulously managed the unfolding narrative. He presented a public face of profound yet controlled grief, commissioning eulogies and funding charities in his wife's name. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, his actions were precise and decisive. He used his immense power and influence to quietly yet firmly direct the police inquiry, subtly ensuring that its scope remained within the bounds of what could be conventionally explained. Any suggestion of an anomaly, any hint of a truth that defied the tangible, was swiftly, ruthlessly suppressed. The investigation, designed to uncover a crime, instead found itself staring into an abyss of the unexplained. The police, unable to comprehend or contain the truth, officially closed the case after a mere 6 days, citing insufficient evidence. Evangelene's disappearance became a cold case, a chilling testament to the power of secrets and the limits of human understanding. The ultimate fate of Evangelene's explosive evidence entrusted to Mrs. Sedgwick remains shrouded in the terrifying silence imposed by the Newport Compact. While Mrs. Sedgwick bravely attempted to deliver the damning files to the Boston Herald and the New York World, her efforts were met with an impenetrable wall of resistance. The very newspapers Evangeline hoped would expose the truth found their interest inexplicably waning, their editors suddenly reluctant to pursue a story that threatened such powerful interests. The subtle whispers, the veiled threats from well-dressed men who spoke of unfortunate consequences, proved chillingly effective. The Compact knew, and they acted swiftly, meticulously, to contain the truth, ensuring Evangeline's final act of defiance remained buried. The official narrative of Evangeline Vandermark's tragic, accidental death abroad became the accepted truth, meticulously maintained by Cornelius and the vast, insidious machinery of the Newport Compact. But within the walls of the mansion, among the few trusted servants who witnessed the impossible reality of her disappearance, whispers persisted. Margaret Sullivan, the head housekeeper, would forever recount the chilling tale of the warm gown, the lingering lavender scent, and the sealed mansion. Her story, alongside Thomas Brennan's account of the pristine snow and Charles Henley's bewildered testimony, formed a secret oral history, passed down in hushed tones, a testament to the truth that defied official records. Evangeline had been claimed by an abyss far more terrifying than any ocean depth, an abyss of power, of wealth, of absolute control, meticulously engineered to swallow its secrets whole. The disappearance of Evangeline Vandermark stands as one of America's most profound and unsettling cold cases, a chilling testament to the unseen forces that operate beyond law, beyond justice, and often beyond human comprehension. Her body was never found, her fate an enduring enigma, the very essence of her existence consumed by the terrifying machinations of the Newport Compact. Pittsburgh's hidden abyss, the disappearance that claimed a millionaire's wife, 1887, is more than just a historical account. It is a profound journey into the shadows, where corporate ambition bleeds into forbidden practice, where psychological control reigns supreme, and where the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs into a terrifying unknown. Evangeline's legacy lives not in her wealth, but in the questions her vanishing left behind. The true price of ambition, the depth of institutional corruption, and the terrifying reality that some truths are too dangerous to ever see the light of day. Her story echoes through the halls of privilege, a chilling reminder that vast fortunes can not only buy silence, but can literally make a person disappear. She was claimed not by a killer with a blade, but by the abyss itself, the unseen, omnipresent force of the Newport Compact. This knowledge, once heard, cannot be unseen. It will change you forever.